With me now, professor and author of Obama's America, a transformative vision of our national identity, Ian Reifowitz. Ian, how you doing?
Fine, thank you, Liz. Always good to see you.
It's good to have you here. All right, Ian, this is a continuation from our segment last week. Promised that we would come back and touch on that topic that we just got to at the very end when we were out of time last week, and that is to address this question. Who is held to higher account in the media, Democrats or Republicans? President Trump versus President Obama. I'm going to give you the first shot at that. Go for it.
Thanks, Liz. Well, look, here's where I would start with. Birtherism is, in a word, the mother of all unfounded accusations. Without birtherism, Donald Trump wouldn't be president of the United States. Donald Trump was the birther-in-chief for a number of years, and upon that foundation launched his campaign for the presidency, along with 16 other Republicans, many of whom were highly qualified for the presidency, all of whom were as qualified or more qualified than he. Yet, despite having been a birther, which should have really ended his political career before it started, he was given an incredible amount of free media attention by the media at the expense of other Republicans.
Wait a second.
Seriously, right?
Wait a second. What does this have to do with media bias, though? I mean, every news story, as they probably rightly should, they condemned anything that he said about birtherism. And if you want to do a comparison game here, if you have allegations that have no substantiation, which birtherism certainly was, there are allegations now against President Trump that have no substantiation. All the Russian allegations, even the top Democrats say those have no substantiation. But the media is acting like that is true, even when they acted like birtherism was false. That's a double standard.
Well, I was almost there, and you certainly can't read my mind, so I don't fault you, Liz, for jumping in there. I was almost there, but well, if you look at the way that Donald Trump was covered during the campaign, his campaign speeches and rallies were given wall-to-wall coverage, right? Studies were done that he got about $2 billion of free media coverage. Anytime he spoke, it was covered as if it was a campaign commercial. That wasn't done for Jeb Bush. It wasn't done for Ted Cruz. It wasn't done for John Kasich. So the media, rather than do its job as a checker of facts, it simply let him speak. It rolled the cameras. Whereas when other candidates made speeches, they might show the candidate speaking on background, but the talking heads talked right over them. So in terms of media bias, if the media were holding accountable people who made unfounded accusations, they would have held accountable Donald Trump.
But the number of minutes they spend on a story, the number of minutes the media spends on a story is not indicative of their bias. I mean, we were actually one of the only networks here at One America that showed his speeches from start to finish without constantly interrupting for commentary. But if you look, I mean, let me ask you just a mathematical question here. This isn't even just opinion here. What percentage of the commentary on the major networks as it related to Trump's rallies, what percentage was positive versus what percentage of it was negative?
I couldn't give you a number like that, but what I can tell you is that if you look at the way that the rallies were covered, he got much more airtime, and I don't mean time talking about him.
Airtime isn't biased, though. I don't argue with you that he got more airtime. Airtime isn't biased, though.
But he got time to speak. The other candidates didn't have their rallies broadcast with him speaking directly into the camera shown on television. Okay, so if there had been, my point is, had there been a media bias against him, he would have gotten worse coverage. But again, now I'm only comparing him to the other Republican candidates. Let's compare him to President Obama.
Wait a second. I want to, before you move on, I want to touch on that, the opportunity to speak. I mean, some of these candidates, especially on the other side of the aisle, they had plenty of opportunity to speak. They just chose not to. I mean, do you remember how many days it was between Hillary Clinton's press conferences, how many days she went between talking openly, allowing the press to ask her questions?
I also remember Mr. Trump not having many press conferences either. I'm talking about live rallies where the press is not asking questions. He's just in front of a crowd cheering. So those aren't exactly open to press questions either. But if you look at the comparison, I don't remember about Barack Obama making unfounded accusations. I don't want to say he didn't make any unfounded accusations, but I really looked back. I didn't see any unfounded accusations that approached not only birtherism, but the accusations that the predecessor wiretapped him, or that Susan Rice committed crimes, or that millions of people voted illegally. Barack Obama wasn't throwing around those kinds of unfounded accusations.
No, he wasn't perhaps throwing around unfounded accusations that didn't impact people's lives. What he was doing was throwing around lies that did impact people's lives. I mean, he said, if under Obamacare, if you like your doctor, you can keep it. We couldn't. He said, if you like your plan, you could keep it. We couldn't. He said, you know, the average family's premiums, healthcare premiums will go down by $2,500. We know that's false. They've gone up by average over 25%. In some places like Arizona, 116%. He said the penalty associated with Obamacare wasn't a tax. The Supreme Court ruled it is a tax. I mean, the stuff President Obama said might not have been quite as sensationalist, but it arguably impacted our lives, your life, Ian, my life, a lot more because it impacted our pocketbooks. It impacted our freedom. And the media never came out and said, oh, President Obama is a pathological liar, even though it's been proven by time that the things he said were a lie. Yet they hurl those accusations at Trump. That's bias.
Well, first of all, I would have to disagree with you. We can get into the specifics of those points that you raised, but President Obama was pilloried by the media day after day after day over, if you like your plan, you can keep it. It was the #1 news story in the mainstream media, not the conservative media, but the mainstream media day after day after day.
Ian, did the media call him a pathological liar? Did they call President Obama a pathological liar?
Well, Barack Obama isn't a pathological liar. Donald Trump is a pathological liar. There's no question by any definition.
No, I'm just saying, be that as it may, coverage is not indicative of bias. I'll repeat that again. Just because they covered that story, I mean, as well they should. It was a lie that the president told that impacted the people. It doesn't mean that they accused him of some of the things they accused Trump of. I don't think that just coverage is indicative of bias. Ian,